Um, maybe we could even talk about some of the titles. The titles are very interesting. Like, for example, like Destiny Unperplexed, that's the title of the first play. You could tell me whether or not you agree with this interpretation. So Destiny Unperplexed, we know starting out that King Arthur is not what the, let's call it canon for the sake of argument, is not what the canon says it is, right? Like, King Arthur is not actually of royal heritage. King Arthur is like essentially like a found child. Merlin is not a magician, so on and so forth. But by calling it Destiny Unperplexed, there's also a kind of a subtitle, CUM, CUM. You're essentially saying that this kind of like this emphasis on genetics, this emphasis on origins, it doesn't really seem to matter, because so many things in the world eventually they truly do get mythologized, and you keep playing with this idea from the first play onwards that mythologies are there to serve kind of like as an easy tale, and it doesn't have to be about something like highfalutin like old time legends. Mythologies could be as simple as what writers today do to themselves, the way that political parties mythologize themselves and each other, and politicians in the past. All of that kind of fluff, right? That we think of the beginnings of these legends. It doesn't really seem to matter in my mind. Would you agree with that assessment of the title?
Well, it's been months since I read. The title comes from one of the things I did in my plays. Was all of the 67 plays. When I have a title and I have an epigraph to it, the epigraph comes from somewhere in that work that I'm quoting, in that artist. So was it Jeffers? Because I don't have it up in front of me.
For the first play, it's a Wallace Stevens poem where the son has to kind of like live a life in kind of like to make up for the father.
And so it's probably from another stanza there. I like the title. I wanted to have very simple titles, 2-word. I think they're all 2-word titles, and it just seemed. What
do you mean by simple? What do you mean by simple?
Just 2 words. I didn't want to have when I have, for example, the Genghis Khan, the Khan plays, it would be Genghis Khan and the Tangad Anemone. Well, it would be Ogadai Khan and was it the Golden Horde or something? And then the last one was Kubla Khan and the Presta John Parallax. So I didn't want to. I was going specifically for a nickel and dime book kind of titles for the Khan plays, but I wanted to have just very compressed, sort of enigmatic titles. And Destiny Unperplexed, this is straightforward. I'm not mixing the destinies of these characters with excess stuff. I'm trying to be more straightforward. This is basically a father and son play, even though Merlin isn't technically the father.
Yeah, like things have a sense in this play, and all of them actually. Things seem to be reaching an endpoint and a crescendo, kind of like irrespective of anything around. And part of that has to do, like, you have the meta-fictional aspect of the Watcher, right? The Watcher as the kind of the great author, the creator of all these characters. Creator, not in the sense of the legends, but, you use the legends for your own purposes. That destiny, that endpoint, a fulcrum, like, we're going to hit it, irrespective kind of like of anything else, because the author, the Watcher in that sense, is in control. That's just the way that I interpreted the title. What about, so to get to some of the specifics of the first play, do you agree with my assessment that, so like, when you're reading the first play, you definitely get a sense that there is something. Merlin is presented kind of as a fool, but also kind of wise in many respects. And same thing with Arthur. Arthur, as a teenager and as a child, has a very strong philosophical streak, poetic streak. He has a way of expressing himself that's very memorable. He has a way of like thinking about, even like when he, for example, kills a frog. It really kind of like sticks in the memory. Did you write Arthur in that way, specifically in the first play, just to upend so much of that potential that we think might be coming, like just to kind of like show maybe the failures that will come later, and to make that unexpected? Because personally, I didn't expect that Arthur would essentially, by the second play, and especially by the third, when it's just kind of an extended scene with a Guinevere. Like, I didn't expect him to turn into essentially like a clown character, which to me, he just feels like a clown character by the second and third play. I expected him to be like a wise philosopher king based on the evidence as presented in the first play.
I didn't plan out the 5 plays. I don't do extensive structures. I wrote each play, and I had some ideas of where it was to go, and then I just let it go. And so in the first play...
See, something planned it. Destiny Unperplexed, something planned it, whether or not you wanted it to.
Well, possibly. But in each play, the different characters are serving a different function. Arthur takes a background to Sir Gawain and his brothers in the second play, and in the third play, we get a sense of Arthur as sort of this. You know, he doesn't care if Guinevere is having an affair because he recognizes. Well, look, I've been fucking around a lot of the chicks. If she wants to go with Lancelot, he doesn't give a shit. That's a more realistic, and I think that shows that he's a mature character. But no, he's not some he doesn't pull the sword from the stone. He's anointed Arctur, which is the old English term for warlord or chief. And there's a debate that there wasn't ever.
Is it? I thought that was the term for a star, like in some constellation.
Well, yes, it means the bear. It means the bear.
Oh, that's what it means. Yes,
it's a chief of the war. They're the ancient Britons. Their warlords were called the bear, So Arctur meaning bear, but it was a term. It was like calling someone an emperor, Arctur the warlord. So if there was a real King Arthur, there's a debate over whether this was a guy who we don't know his name, but he became the Arctur, and that then became the King Arthur. So that's why there's the scene where the guys lift him over the shoulder after the battle that frees them from the Romans, and they're going Arctur, Arctur,
yeah,
Arctur.
I think that's still in the first play. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's why that happened. But I didn't have any particular arc. The characters were going. The only character that I planned to have to rehabilitate was Sir Gawain, because I've always been a fan of Sir Gawain. I really detested that Lancelot and Tristan overshadowed him in the later stuff, because in the early cycles of poems, Gawain is clearly the greatest of the knights, and he's the only one of the knights that I can think of off the top of my head that has some seemingly supernatural powers, and that he got stronger towards midday, and afternoon his powers waxed. So other than that, the characters serve particular purposes, but within them, how many times have you seen a really cute kid turns out to be someone just How many times have you seen a vivacious child turn out to be just the chum that...
So that part was intentional, right? Was that intentional? Or did it just emerge that way?
Within the plays, that just emerged that way, with the necessity of the particular dramas. Arthur has to be the kind of laissez-faire king who's been king for a while, and he just doesn't give a shit anymore. You're king, you're all powerful. It's like, I'm the king. What the fuck? Go ahead, fuck Lancelot if you want. So, and that's one of the things that I think. Let me talk. One of the things that has really damaged modern television is the serialization of all shows, even comedies. Back in the 1970s, there was episodic television, and sometimes this could lead to problems, like in The Odd Couple, where Oscar and Felix meeting was told 3 or 4 different times that were contradictory. But not everything has to be a fucking soap opera. Not everything has to be serialized. So I wanted to get that each of these plays is an episode. Now, I do have continuing traits, but they're told from a slightly different perspective. Each of the plays is a parallax on these characters, in that Gawain is seen in different ways. Sir Osriel is seen in different ways. Dagonet is seen in different ways. Sometimes the characters are seen a bit more. For example, Sir Bors is seen as, I guess, the most intelligent of the 3 Grail questers in the 4th play. By the 5th play, he's just like, yeah, I've come back. He ends up being killed off right off the bat. So, these have to serve a function. The characters serve a function. And so there was no grand overall plan, because Cassavetes wouldn't have had a plan. I was going with each play there and what came to me as I was writing it. And I'm good enough to know, though, that you need to have a certain kind of parallax because you don't want to have the predictability, because people aren't predictable. Sometimes people have great potential and they squander it. Other times people are underrated and they come to be more interesting. Like Dagonet turns out to be far more interesting than he ever was in any other iteration of him that I know of.